And the problem when it comes to Civil War combat, you have this block of wood right here. It is about the length of an average-sized human's torso, from my waist to my chest. You ever see The Patriot with Mel Gibson? Right? Tells his son, aim small, miss small. You aim at a small target. If you miss, you're probably not going to miss by that much. So you want to shoot somebody, especially in the Civil War, in the chest cavity. All right? Modern day military, same thing. Boom, boom, boom. You hit them in the widest part of the body, you're going to put them down. But if you look here in this pressure-treated 12 by 12, here is a Civil War mini ball, 57 millimeter mini ball. When it penetrates, you can see I shot it right here. It goes into the wood, it fits there perfectly, correct? But let's look at the depth of it. The Civil War, these heavy, low-velocity bullets, if you stick a probe in there, it only goes in about an inch. That's all the farther it goes into the wood. Now, it's wood, so it's not coming out the other side. Let's fast forward to World War II that we know starts today. In the front here, you have the entry wound from an M1 Garand, the American rifle, and the German Mauser up here. Well, if I turn the block of wood around, the German Mauser blew out a knot in the top, and you can see the two exit wounds from where the M1 bullets came out. They went all the way through. All right? Steel jacketed, high velocity bullets go in one end and out the other. In the Civil War, that was not the case. This bullet traveled very slow velocity. So when it hits you, it's going to go in, but it's not going to come out the other side. So the effect, literally, of a Civil War bullet hitting you would be the same if you took a hammer and smacked somebody's bone as hard as you could. That is the Civil War bullet right there. Just for effect, whoops, bam. When this hits your body, what happens to the bone? It shatters. It is like thousands of shards of glass. So there's absolutely nothing you can do. We don't have steel rods. We don't have Doc Alcott's orthopedics to put you all back together. No screws, no steel plates. Whatever is hit, the only thing you can do is cut it off. All right? The glass is shattered. You've got to find where the mini ball is because it's made of lead. Can you leave it in there? No. So you've got to do a couple things. So up here, and the Battle of Antietam has just ended, and I hear we've got some incoming soldiers on the way, so we got to do this fast. You have a hunk of flesh and bone here, and everything is gross. It's sticky, as you can see. It's bloody. Oh my God. It's rancid. The smell is terrible unless you're Jake. And what I have to do as the surgeon is get a probe and feel where the bullet is. I've got to get it out of there. The skin is there. I've got to get that away and gently press around the bone until I find something that's hard and kind of circular. Then quickly, I've got to cut in there and I've got to find if that is the bullet or not. Now, if you're the first patient of the day, as Claire said, my tools are not the greatest. A lot of things I just found laying around the kitchen. Luckily, I had a surgeon's scalpel. Oh, by the way, I'm going to wash my scalpel off in this nice sanitary water that I'm putting my hands in. I get out the scalpel, I dig, and I hope that I can find the mini ball. And as I dig in there, I pull out the mini ball. It's extracted. Now, the patient is lying there the whole time with that going on. Are we finished yet? No, we are not. So I hear that we've got some incoming wounded getting ready to come in, and we're going to see how well we can do. I believe the soldier's got some friends helping him up here on the surgeon's table. So if you guys can find this wounded combat vet, Ben, you guys can bring him in, and we'll see if we can save the young man's life if possible. Who is my surgeon? Who volunteered to be the surgeon? All right, okay, so Will and I'm going to need more than Alex to hold the young patient down. Here he is. Claire Barton found, he's the only guy found alive in the cornfield. Let's put him up here on the table and see how he's going to do. He's, man, all right. Actually, could you turn it the other way? All right, yeah. All right.
Why aren't you helping with this?
All right. So what our surgeon is going to have, straighten out your leg, what our surgeon is going to have to do, he's got this bloody hunk of bone right here. He is going to have to, you doing all right, buddy? Suck it up, man. All right, what do you think this is? All right. Will is going to have to put on this pair of glasses and grab a glove when you're ready. Will, our doctor, is going to have to dig through this grotesque bloody nub sticking out of his leg and try and find the mini ball and then extract it. Anybody have a stopwatch or something on your phone? On your, all right, when I say go, hit the start. Go. All right, Will, try and find that. Put on the glove. You don't have to yet. That's only when you're cutting. Try and find the mini ball screen. All right, start shaking. Pass out. Hold it! We need to hold him! Hold him. Oh, God! It hurts! Just kill me, Doc! Just kill me! Are you getting it out? You're trying, for God's sake! Oh, my God! Oh, my God! Oh, that's bone. Oh, no, that's bone.
That's not, I don't want to hear that!
Get it out! Oh, God, someone grab his other leg.
Get it out of my leg!
Oh. All right, there we go. All right, all right, all right, all right. We're only half done. Hang on. All right, scooch him over. All right, set that stuff down. Move your leg. It's already cut off. Will is now, you're going to saw through his bone. Hang on, hold him. Hold him tight. All right. You can actually saw. You have to. You got to get the bone off. Oh my God! All right. There we go. Time.
1 minute 40 seconds.
1 minute 40 seconds. All right. Round of applause for everybody. You guys go take the clothes off and wash up. We're not done yet. All right, we're not done yet. The best surgeons could remove the meat from the bone and extract the bullet in less than 2 minutes. So Will actually did a pretty good job. There's a problem, however. We want to cleanly remove the meat from the bone. Will, if you heard him, could not find the bullet. He goes, I found the bone. How did Will extract the bullet? He didn't slice it open and use the tweezers. He dug around. All right, and has mangled this chicken leg. So the bullet was sitting right next to the bone, feeling along it, a little slice, and everything would have been okay. So how do you think this would feel on a real human? No. Ben did a great job. That would not feel very good at all. Now, a couple other little things. If you're the first guy getting operated on in the morning, then the instruments are probably pretty sharp and clean. But if you're the 100th guy, or you're the 1000th guy, I just take the scalpel, wipe it off, and I go right back to work. Am I cleaning my hands? Am I cleaning my instruments? No. And what about the hacksaw blade? Right? I put this hacksaw blade in for this lesson every year. It's pretty sharp, but it's not super sharp, right? So if you're the first guy in, yeah, man, you're buzzing through. But you're at Antietam, you're at Shiloh, you're at Gettysburg, you're the 100th guy or the 1000th guy. This thing is no longer sharp, all right? It is dull. It's like being cut with a butter knife. It is going to hurt unbelievably bad. Now, we heard Ben. He took it well. I mean, I got to say, Ben, that was a really heck of a job there. You might ask yourself, well, why simply not do what to the pig? Knock them out. Why don't we just knock them out? It was very expensive. All right. How about, do we even know how? What are we going to do with that? Now we're not done. Ben has got his leg cut off below the knee. We've got blood everywhere. We'll just wash the table down with it. But now, how are we going to stop the bleeding and the infection? Only pansies get infections, like whatever. Right? How do we stop the bleeding? There were a couple different techniques. Use a tourniquet, all right, some clamps, pieces of leather that when you twist the wing nut, it totally cramps down on the skin. But that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt really bad. Cauterize. Nothing like getting a hot instrument, like a butcher knife, putting it in a fire, and then with the raw flesh and all the tendons hanging out and nerve endings, you clamp that hot iron on there and we cauterize the wound. That would probably hurt really bad. You would probably, pass out from the pain. You may lose bodily control. You may urinate yourself simply because it hurts so bad. If we're not going to clamp a hot iron on there, there's another way to do it, especially in the South. Get a lot of pine sap, some pine tar, heat it up, and then rub it over the wound. It is also going to hurt really bad, but it'll form like a crust and a shell, and it's supposed to help keep out infection. All in all, Civil War medical technology was not that far evolved from the Middle Ages of Europe. And these are the brilliant scholars where if you had a hole in your head, they would drill a hole in it to let the evil spirits out. And that's pretty much what we're doing. It's just not going to feel very good. Harvard Medical School, one of the premier medical schools in the country, did not have a microscope or own a stethoscope until 1868, 3 years after the war was over. So ancient Egyptians who were able to do braces and make some wooden prosthetics and do surgery, or ancient Chinese river valley medicine, or the Middle Eastern Arabic doctors like Al-Razi knew much more about medicine and medical practices than we did 152, 53 years ago. They were much better at it 5,000 years ago than we were at this time. How far has medical technology come? And surgery in the Civil War, when you're wounded, basically means an amputation. There's really nothing else they can do for a gunshot wound or even a severe laceration. Stitching isn't widely prevalent. There's no medical glue. So if it's a bad wound, you're going to have it amputated. So have you ever heard the term sawbones? Ever hear that term before? Like for an old country doctor, you call them sawbones. This is Chapel Hill, so you guys don't get out beyond the university very much. But out in greater America, there's an old term for, oh boy, Doc Olcott, he's nothing but an old sawbones. And that term is literal because if you needed something removed, the favorite implement of the doctor was the saw. Right. Now, why is this so? Well, after Confederate manpower is so low after Antietam, Confederate States of America, so for those of you who don't like drafting, is the first governmental agent in the country to enforce a mandatory draft. All men between 15 and 45 must now serve in the Confederate Army. You don't have a choice. Later on, the Union will enact its own draft, And there were a few professions that got you out of having to be a frontline soldier. The most prominent one was a butcher. If you were the town butcher, you had to work for the army, but not as a soldier. You were the surgeon, right? For the simple fact, there were a couple reasons. Number one, you knew how to remove meat from bone. Your job is to be a butcher. Working with the meat and the blood and the smell, much like Jake the Butcher over here, who does it so fast. And, all right.
It's almost enjoyable.
It is almost enjoyable. I think that's what your air freshener in your truck is, Jake, or in your Prius. I'm sorry. All right. Anyway, they can handle the smell. They can handle the blood. The best surgeons could do what Will did. They removed the bullet with a little more delicacy than the probe, Dr. Will, but that's all right. They did it clean in less than 2 minutes. This was assembly line. This wasn't, we don't care about you, bedside manner. No. It's get you on and off the operating table, because we may operate for 20, 23 hours straight. After some of the more horrific battles, you didn't have time. Oh man, I gotta go get a cup of coffee. Yeah, you think that guy was doing a good job? You know, and it's funny, but that's really what some of these guys went through. Now, you ask, or about 75%.
Wait, why did they do that?
Do what? Just get like a guillotine?
No, yeah, they just chop off the part and cauterize.
Well, I think you have to make sure the bone isn't splintered. You got to make sure you remove the mini ball.
General field.
Jake, if I'm ever wounded in combat, I want you to be my surgeon. Whatever. And imagine if you missed, you hit too high or too low, you crushed another part of that bone. To them, the sawing was much more precision. I don't know if it was, but that's what they claim. That's a good question. Now, why not just knock the poor guy out? Poor Ben is living through all of that. Why not give him some anesthetic? Well, ether, chloroform, nitrous oxide had come into use, but very few people were trained on how to use them. You've got to know a person's age, height, body weight, blood pressure. If you give them too much, it could kill them. If you don't give them enough, it doesn't really matter. That's why anesthesiologists at the hospital make big money, because there's a way to do it. Yes, sir. You could get them drunk if you've got enough alcohol, but the problem with getting somebody drunk is they bleed even faster. So you're trying to take all those things. Yeah, here's a shot of whiskey. Brace yourself, tough guy. Here it goes. So if you ever, a lot of guys were given 3 choices. Number 1, you would be given a thick piece of leather, like a belt or something, to bite down on. 2, you could be given a stick, like we saw in the video, and you just bite down on it. Anybody ever heard the term bite the bullet?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta bite the bullet. It's gonna suck, but you just have to do it. Well, they would literally take mini balls and put them in the back molars and say, just bite down on the soft lead and just take it. It's gonna hurt, you know it's coming. Bite the bullet, tough guy, don't wuss out. This is what we have to do. You go to a lot of Civil War museums, Petersburg and other places, and you can see mini balls with like teeth marks in them. That's what they were actually doing. So that's the term, bite the bullet. It's gonna hurt, it's not gonna be fun. What's that, sir?
Wouldn't find a bullet or your teeth.
Probably, but I mean the lead's pretty soft and adrenaline, and at that point I just don't think they care. Yeah. A good surgeon was the fast one. The local butcher now has a job. And surviving the operation, surviving the amputation was only phase 1. Then you have what comes next, and some of you mentioned it. There could be gangrene, which means you got to remove more of the limb or you're going to die. There's the flies and the maggots and the pestilence. So there's going to be infection, blood disease. A lot of the guys thought it was caused by bad air. So if we open the windows and let the sunlight in, the bad air will be blown out and you won't get infected. This makes absolutely no sense as you're operating in barns, you know, chicken coop, rooftops, pieces of wood, whatever you can find to make a stable platform. Plus, as you saw, and you can see from the outfit here, you know, doctors, when they go into surgery, what do they do for like just, you know, minutes? They're scrubbing, they're making sure there's no germs on their hands. You walk into a doctor's office, what do you smell? The bleach, the carbolic acid, the rubbing alcohol to cleanse the instruments. Well, that did not exist. French bacteriologist Louis Pasteur and Joseph Lister in England came up with the idea of antiseptic and, you know, bacteria right near the end of the Civil War. Just simply basic sanitation in battlefield hospitals could have saved lives. Tables, instruments, saws, scalpels were used all day. By 1865, we're understanding antiseptic and sanitation, but during the war, it simply didn't exist. But many of the soldiers were saved by amputation. It literally was the only thing you could do to save someone's life. The smaller the appendage, a finger or a hand, your survival rate dramatically increased. Your arm below the elbow. Wound near the shoulder, that was when we have to have a whole arm removed. That was pretty deadly. Same thing with the leg. Foot, ankle, you're okay. Below the knee, okay. If you had to have your leg cut off up by your pelvis, your death rate, your mortality rate was much, much higher. Up by the top, up by the percent, probably like 29–30%. That you're going to die. Yes. After you survive all that pain, you're going to die anyway. I think. No, wait a minute. Above the thigh, big, it's around 53%. I'll check. It's very high. It's like 1 and 2. That's a huge, huge limb. A lot of blood being taken off. More Confederates died than Union soldiers because as bad as the hospitals were, the Unions were a little better.
Why couldn't they just take the board out and then just like heat up that entire area?
You mean heat up and kill? It was probably clean after it was cauterized, but the recovery time and just laying around all the blood and they didn't clean the hospitals. They didn't change your clothes. You'd been living in for 3 weeks.
What do they do now to remove? What do they do after they remove a bullet now? Like if somebody gets shot.
Well, now you could, you know, it depends on where they're shot. The modern steel jacketed bullet would break the bone cleanly. So you could put a steel rod in there, some screws, and reattach it. It doesn't shatter the bone like glass, like the old mini ball did. Jake.
How many surgeons and doctors got infections and things like that?
It's really hard to say because they didn't really keep good records. But most of the doctors, you know, I don't think they got sick. They got like colds, but from their work, not many, because it's what they did anyway. So, so disease will kill twice the number of those killed in battle. And we just simply didn't understand basic hygiene. You're in a crowded camp. You're wearing your same clothes forever. You dig your latrine right next to the lake or the pond or the stream, which is your source of fresh water. So your water is already tainted. Things are just not clean at all. Simple things like Jake asked, the cold, measles, mumps, things that chicken pox were deadly when they went through a camp, especially if you were a more rural soldier, maybe from the South or from out in the Midwest, because you hadn't been exposed to a large population. It's like the Native Americans, when the Europeans showed up, they simply weren't exposed. Like here at the high school, by January, we're good against anything short of Ebola because we go to school in a giant petri dish. You guys are coughing and snotting and rubbing your snot all over my desks and door handles. And so by January, we're like, whatever. Is that all you got? But a flu shot, nothing. All right, I go to high school. So the only thing even more secure than that is like kindergarten. Yeah, kindergarten. They're just full of snot. So Eli.
So what happened to all the people that survived having their body parts amputated? Like, they can't really do anything for the army anymore.
No, they don't. Well, the most famous one that comes back to fight is John Gordon, my man with his leg in the fish tank. But you normally try and find some menial labor job that you can perform. Some guys could go to work in factories with one arm or one leg. A lot of guys just depended upon their family members, their neighbors, or even their church for their existence, because they literally, back in those days, you needed to be able-bodied to perform labor, and if you can't, you can't. The other thing, and you guys are going to laugh at this, is another thing that, yes, Ben?
What do they do with all the body parts?
A lot of them were burns, or they were buried in like shallow graves, and farmers would talk for years on how when after a hard winter, when the spring thaw came, bones would pop up. Gettysburg, Shiloh, Antietam, Cold Harbor, you try and bury them or burn them, but there was just so many you couldn't get, so a lot of times they just left until they rotted. Very, very, very ghastly. Venereal disease. That was also a large problem, particularly to armies who are camped in urban areas for a long time. New Orleans, Richmond, Washington, D.C., places like that, you are going to be more susceptible, lured away. Hey, there's another girl not named Mom. And so venereal diseases are rampant. The cures are kind of interesting. Number one, just dump some whiskey on it and alcohol will take care of it. Or you could get some herbs and make a poultice and draw the infection out. Or some of the more less intelligent, braver lads said, well, we'll just put a little bit of alcohol on it and light it on fire. Yes, okay. That is probably not the greatest idea of all time. But, so, no, Jake.
I mean, they sure weren't spreading it.
Yeah. So, the famous saying in the Army, flies spread disease, so keep yours zipped. You don't have to worry about it. But venereal disease lasted much longer than the war because a lot of guys took it home and infected their wives with it. This is going to be semi-funny, but the most dangerous thing in the Civil War was diarrhea, known as dysentery. It has some colorful names. Old soldier's disease, what was one of them? The Tennessee trots, because when you got to go, you do that, you know, you just got to run to the nearest bathroom. And it influences, it's actually so bad it influences the war. Lee had a bad bout of diarrhea at Gettysburg, and some think that's what made him make some incorrect decisions. On campaign, some guys would cut the backs out of their pants, because you couldn't have guys running into the bushes every couple seconds, so you literally just went on the fly. That's when you want to be in front of the column waiting to march and not on the back. And it sounds gross and it sounds disgusting, and that's because it literally, it was. And this is an outfit you would see a Civil War doctor in, and that is, I mean, as best we can do in 2016 as recreating the real thing. Yes, sir?
You got 5 minutes.
I got 5 minutes. Okay. Any final questions before I go and wash up? No? I hope you at least learned a little bit. Remember, today is Pearl Harbor Day. So go home and tell your parents about Pearl Harbor, and don't be afraid to share a little bit about what you have seen here. So anyway, I want you all to go to Jersey Mike's and get a nice juicy roast beef roast beef sandwich right now. So anyway, Jake, I got some chicken here. You wanna like take it home and carve it up?
Is it like good chicken?
No, Jake, it's not good chicken. I gotta make sure all my mini balls are out of it. So anyway, Will, you did about the same type of job as Joseph did in second.
Joseph graded?
Yes.
I was getting worried. I thought I like wasn't gonna find it.
Sir.
Can I get a ball?
I need these, I'm sorry. I'll bring you a new one from, those are all gross full of body parts. You want a round shot or a mini ball? Mini ball. All right, guys. Can someone get the door for me?
Wait,
And
should I stop recording?
yeah, hit stop, please. I think I